Children. 1.5 million children. 1.5 million sweet, darling children. 3-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 12-year-olds. Curly-haired, sleek-headed, smooth-skinned, bright-eyed, laughing, smiling. Somebody's little children. 1.5 million small faces. 1.5 million times the future of the Jewish nation was beaten, tortured, and methodically massacred. 1.5 million souls snatched from this world before their time, deprived not only of life, but even of a gravesite. The innocent life of Jewish children in Europe was changed forever when the Nazis rose to power. No one imagined that the Nazis would murder children. They were wrong. Out of 1.5 million Jewish children living in pre-war Europe, 9 out of 10 Jewish children were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. The future of the Jewish people was decimated. How did the handful of children survive? Most of these children survived in hiding. Some were given over to non-Jewish families and had to hide their identities. Some children were hidden together with their parents or other family members. Some children found shelter in monasteries and convents, learned the customs of their adopted religion, and were baptized. Some of these children were tolerated, exploited, or abused. Others were loved, accepted, and treated like their own children. They hid in forests, barns, attics, cemeteries, in cellars, in holes dug under floor planks. After liberation, brave people emerged, family members and organizations. They tried to locate and retrieve hidden Jewish children and bring them back to the Jewish nation. Many of these children were never found and are still there today. This is the story of the agony of separation, of impossible choices, and of constant fear. This is the story of the boundless love of mothers and fathers who were helpless in the face of the madness that surrounded them, yet courageous enough to give their most precious treasures away. This is the story of a life in the shadows, of disguised identities, where a careless remark could lead to certain death. This is the story of righteous Gentiles, of traumatic reunification of broken Jewish families, and of divided loyalties. The Hidden Child is a story that will not be hidden anymore. It begs to be told. It begs to be understood.
הבעיה של החסרת ילדים היא הייתה מאוד מורכבת, מפני שבאופן טבעי הורים רגילים שהילד יהיה קרוב אליהם. בתקופת השואה זאת הייתה מלכודת מוות.
There were parents who said, what happened to me will happen to my child. I can't separate. But there were families who said, I will send them away because they will survive.
The decision to hide a child was probably the most difficult decision a Jewish parent had to face, and many simply could not do it.
Think of it for a moment as a parent. What would it take for you to give away your child? For me, it's inconceivable. But I live in ordinary times.
אחת השאלות הכי גדולות זה ילדי המסתור, להוציא את הילד מהבית. מתי? אנחנו יודעים שאימהות לא נתנו את ילדיהם למסתור בתקופה של הרעב בגטו, כמעט לא. רק כשכלו כל הקיצין, כשהתחילו כבר שילוחים, אז התחיל המרוץ הזה והחיפוש הזה.
But the fact is that thousands and thousands of Jewish parents did release their children when they had that feeling that something terrible may happen to me, something terrible. I don't want my children to come along.
המקום היחידי שהיה סיכוי להציל את הילדים זה להעביר אותם מה שנקרא לצד הארי, לצד הנוצרי, ולמסור אותם לידיים זרות.
Most parents wanted to find somebody that will look after their child. But it was not so easy, because if somebody will help a Jew, he will die.
You have examples where Polish people, non-Polish people sacrificed their life for Jewish children, and this of course is very admirable. On the other hand, we have a situation that Jewish children were slaughtered in the street and nobody paid attention. So it's really very difficult to generalize, because you can find example to either way.
There were two ways of hiding. There was hiding in the open, and then there was hiding clandestinely.
There were instances of children who were hidden with their families or with other adults. So really, there was a wide spectrum of experiences among hidden children.
I was born in Poland. The name of the city was Sanok. My parents got married in 1937. I was born a year later. I was an only child. The Germans came in 1939, I believe it was in May, and some people gave the children away. My parents said, whatever's going to happen to them, they want me to be with them. So we were together. So my aunt went to the market and she bought some stuff from someone and said, the Germans are here and they want to kill us. Could you hide us? She said yes to my aunt with her husband and her 3 children, and then my aunt asked us to go with them. The lady that took us in, her name was Maria Verglishan. Her husband's name was Andrei Verglishan, and they were just very amazing people. To take a chance, jeopardizing her life with her children and the family, to try to save us.
Rodzice, miałam bardzo dobrych rodziców. Ja jestem drugim dzieckiem Andrzeja i Marii Rygliszyn. Działy się te historie, to ja miałam wtedy 6 lat.
There was the 8 of us, so we came there, and the neighbors were not allowed to know the entire 2 years that we stayed there that she's hiding Jews, as well as she had 2 children.
Nie wiedzieliśmy z kim, ile osób, nie wiedzieliśmy jako dzieci nic. To musiała być tajemnica, strasznie wielka tajemnica.
I never saw the house. We didn't see it from the outside or from the inside. So when you open up the barn, I can see myself laying down in the dark, and it was muddy and wet. We didn't have a shower or a bathtub to wash up. So for 2 years, I never showered, I never took a bath. Of course, when I came out, I had lice, but that was a small price to pay.
Że tato wykopał taki dół, żeby tam się te osoby zmieściły. No widocznie na taki głęboki nie był, żeby aż się na stojąco musieli kucać, ale się zmieścili, tam spali i tam żyli w tym dole.
The fact that she was so poor, and I'm stressing that, she didn't have much to give us, and she didn't want to be suspicious to the neighbors, so once a day she would bring a cup of barley. That was for 2 years, 1 cup of barley. When I went, I was like close to 3 years old. I just thought maybe it's some sort of a game. I just thought everything is maybe like make-believe kind of thing. I really don't remember ever crying. I mean, I couldn't have. If I would cry, somebody would hear and I wouldn't be telling you the story now. Towards the end of the war, the Nazis came in to where we were, and one of the soldiers was wounded, and the blood was dripping down, and we just had to ignore it. So Maria Verglishan was downstairs with the Germans, and they said to her, "You don't have to stay here." And she said, "No, I'm just really, very nervous, I feel safer being here with you." The reason that she stayed downstairs, because she knew that we were there.
Także chwilami mama żałowała. No i w tym czasie wiem, że mama nieraz mówiła, nie wiem, czy ja zrobiłam dobrze.
They just believed in doing what is righteous. So when the war ended, I was 5 years old. We were liberated by the Russians. I recall being on trains till we came to Germany. So in Germany, I was in a DP camp, and I went to Bisyakov, and I did what other little girls are doing. And at the end of December 49, I came to the United States. My parents corresponded with Maria Briglishan and her husband, Andre. And then when I got married and my husband found out about what I went through, he was really so anxious to go back to Poland to give them the honor and the thanks that they deserve. But his health did not permit him. And unfortunately, my husband just passed away July of 2016. Now in 2017 for Passover, I went with my children to Arizona. And while I was there, this miracle came up where I met someone there that was doing documentaries and being approached to go to Poland and to meet the Riglishans. I'm also looking forward to recapture what's been on my head for 75 years. It's really very hard to put into words, but it's something that I've been looking forward to go back, and especially to meet with the family, to thank them for giving me the opportunity to be alive so I can have two wonderful children, my son and my daughter, who are with me today.
Wiem, tu była i tam była dziura do pokoju wybita,
Nie,
a oni tu byli. Była wykopana do dołu.
Gdzie było zakopane?
O tak do dołu, taki
Tu.
dół.
Tak, a nie wszystko tak
Nie
było.
wszystko, nie.
Jak po.
Potem tak, takie małe.
Tak ja pamiętam.
I pamiętam, jak mama przyszła raz, strasznie płakała i cała się trzęsła, bo mówi, że szedł Niemiec i była przekonana, że idzie tu do tej piwnicy. A ci państwo byli tu w tym dołku, wyrytym takim w ziemi dołku. Trwało to aż do wieczora. Dopiero wieczór gdzieś się stąd wyprowadzili z Płowiec. Mama wtedy dopiero poszła do piwnicy, odkryła tych ludzi. Mówi, że ci ludzie, myślała, że już poumierali tam.
What I remember, I don't think that I have to say anything. If you just take a picture of this, it should speak for itself. This is much worse than what I remembered. You know, what can I say? Look at this, and I don't think this is not, look, I don't know, I'm alive, so it's okay. You know, I survived this. I am in Sanok right now. I just came from Plovdiv, where I was there 75 years ago. And today I met for the first time their children. They were my age at the time when I was in hiding. I was fortunate enough to have my children come with me. And I hope that they learned something and took something away from there. So what's important for this lesson to know is that you should just really have a heart and be there when someone needs you.
While families were in the ghettos, they did their best to keep the family together. They didn't trust the other side of the fence.
העניין הזה של להעביר ילד, זה היה דבר בלתי מתקבל על הדעת בהתחלה. מתי שזה קרה, זה כשתפסו את זה, שאם לא יעבירו את הילדים לידיים זרות, אין להם סיכוי בכלל לשרוד.
It was very difficult for Jewish families to part with their children. And you never know whether you're going to see them again. And you're putting them into the hands of people who may raise them in another religion. For a religious person, it's a very difficult decision.
בתוך המסתור יש כל מיני שאלות. זה הטרגדיות של הדילמה, שזה איסורי הנפש של המשפחה בהתחבטויות האלה. בתוך זה יש גם נקודה של שאלות הלכתיות, ועוד ועוד שאלות מהמדור של השטן.
Orthodox Jews felt a specific trauma for fear that their children would grow up A, non-observant, and B, even worse than that, non-Jewish. For them, that became a tremendous obstacle for giving away their children in the first place.
Many Jewish parents were faced with a difficult halachic question. In what was arguably a time of life-threatening danger, was it permissible to use every means possible to hide a Jewish child, even as far as placing him or her in convents, under the care of priests and nuns? Rabbi Yaakov Avigdor, Rav of Drohobych, wrote in his memoirs that when he was asked whether people should disguise their children as Aryans and send them to live with non-Jews for their own safety, he sat for hours pondering the issue more than once and ultimately encouraged people to save their children by whatever means necessary, which included hiding them among the non-Jews. What's more, said Rabbi Avigdor, he considered this to be an act of great heroism and sacrifice on the part of loving parents who would stop at nothing to save their beloved children. There were those who held of different opinions, and many parents refused to part with their children. They said, whatever will happen to me will happen to my child.
אני נולדתי בטרנופול, הואיל ושם לא היה פרנסה גדולה, זה היה עיירה, אז ההורים שלי עברו לוורשה. מכיוון שכשגרמנים פיצצו ונכנסו, תוך שבועיים כבר לא היה פולניה, זה היה כבר חלק אינטגרלי מגרמניה. כשאני הרגשתי מיד, היו ערימות של אנשים, מכיוון שאנשים לא קיבלו לא טיפול רפואי, ולא אוכל, ולא מים, ולא להתרחץ, הם פשוט חיכו למוות כל הזמן. זה היה התוצאה של הגטו. וראינו את הצרות, וראינו את הכל, אז התבגרנו מהר. המלחמה פרצה שיהיה לי בתוך הז'קט, מי אני? אז היא כתבה, אוריך מיכאל, נולד 0908-1934, גר ברחוב שוסטרה 19 בוורשה. שיהיה פתק בפנים, שידעו מי אני. שנת 1942, אני הייתי עם ההורים שלי בגטו. יום אחד אמא שלי לא חזרה, זה היה מצב מאוד לא נעים, אני מאוד בכיתי, הייתי מאוד קשור אליה, אבל אני ידעתי את הסיטואציה, שכל יום נעלמים אנשים. והייתי סך הכל אז בן 8. ואבא שלי ראה שאין כאן שום דבר טוב. היו באים עגלות ולוקחים את המתים. שלאבא שלי היה מכיר בשם נובק, שהוא היה נהג של החשמלית, של הטרם. והוא העביר אותי לגברת הלנה סטחוביץ' והיא שמרה עליי. כשאבא שלי מסר אותי, אם תנצל אי פעם מכל המלחמה הזו, תעשה משהו טוב ליהודים. ואבא שלי אמר לי, תשמור על עצמך. זה שנפרדתי מאבא שלי זה מאוד כאב לי, אבל אני הבנתי, לא הלב עבד, אלא הראש עבד. הלנה סטחוביץ' אמרה כל הזמן שאני בן דוד שלה, שבאתי מהמלחמה על יד רוסיה, והיא שומרת עליי. ואני הלכתי איתה לכנסייה, ובצורה כזו, ואני שיחקתי עם הילדים, ואף אחד לא ידע שאני יהודי. המשחק היה הכרחי, זאת אומרת, שברגע שהזהירו אותי, אם אני אעשה טעות אחת, אז אני ילך בדיוק כמו כל היהודים שהם מתים. הייתי צריך לשמור כל הזמן להיות בפוקוס, כמו שאני אמרתי, ולעשות מה שיותר טוב, להיראות כמו גוי, לא כמו יהודי. אבל בתוך תוכי ידעתי שאני יהודי. מי שאז החזיק יהודים, זה אחד דינו מוות. אז היא עשתה דבר גדול מאוד שהיא לא מסרה אותי. יש הרבה סיפורים. לקחו את הכסף, לקחו את הילדים ומסרו אותם ישר לגרמנים. היא הייתה אישה מאוד גבוהה, זאת אומרת, לא חשבה על האינטרסים שלה, אלא על האינטרסים שלי. בזמן שחייתי אצל גברת הלנה, זה היה שיא המלחמה. ב-1944 הרגו חייל גרמני בשכונה ברחוב לצ'יקה, איפה שהייתי גר. כולנו עלינו על רכבת מסע ישר לבוכנוולד. לכל הפולנים, זאת אומרת, אני לא הייתי בתור יהודי, הייתי בתור הבן אחותה של הלנה. והיא קיבלה הרבה יותר אוכל כבר, והיא גם סיפקה לנו את האוכל, מכיוון ששם נתנו סך הכל 2 פרוסות לחם עם כוס מים, או מרק כאילו מקליפות של תפוחי אדמה. השחרור ממחנה בוכנוולד, יום אחד אנחנו קמים בבוקר, אין שומרים, אין כלום, כולם רצים לאמריקאים ששחררו אותנו, ביניהם היה הרב הרשל שכטר. השתחררתי בגיל 10, והייתי 24 קילו. אין לי הסבר איך שרדנו את הזה. אין לי הסבר. השינוי שאני חוויתי ברגע שנגמרה המלחמה, זה דבר שאתה מרגיש נפשית, שאתה משוחרר מכל השמירה, שאתה צריך לשמור על עצמך, שאתה אסור להגיד ככה ואסור להגיד ככה. אתה חייב, כמו שאומרת, כל הזמן להיות בפוקוס, לא לטעות. כשבא הרב יעקב אביגדור לחפש ילדים, אז הוא בא, הגברת הלנה סטחוביץ', ושאל, יש לך ילד יהודי? אמרה, כן. והיא אומרת לי, תשמע, אתה יכול לבוא איתי לפולניה ולהיות פולני. אבל יש לך פה יהודים שהם רוצים להחזיר אותך לחיק היהדות. מה אתה מעדיף? הלנה הייתה אישה מאוד מאוד ערכית. היא נתנה את האפשרות לא לגזול נפש מישראל. הפתק הוא מאמא שלי שכתבה, ואז זה עוד היה, כמו שאומרים, די שלם הפתק. כשפגשתי אותו, הוצאתי את הפתק, וראיתי לו מי אני. לא רק שהגברת הלנה אמרה שאני יהודי, ואמרתי, אני רוצה לבוא ליהודים. אין כמו הזמן של השוויץ, שם התחלתי לחיות. והיה לנו מורים, והיה לנו רופאים, והיה לנו אוכל. אתה יכול להיות אתה. והעיקר החופשיות. ב-1946 עליתי לארץ, גם השאלה, לאן אני הולך? אין לי עם מי לדבר, אין לי שום דבר בראש, רק לשרוד, כמו שאומרים. שוב פעם, ההחלטה הייתה לבוא לישיבת פוניביץ', והלכתי לישיבה קטנה, ואחרי ישיבה גדולה פוניביץ', ב-1957 אני התחתנתי, וברוך השם, יש לי 3 ילדים, ויש לי 9 נכדים, ויש לי גם נינים, וסיימתי עם תואר רב. כל המשפחה שלי, 184 איש, נרצחו על ידי הנאצים, ואני נשארתי אחד יחיד. בקשר להחלטה של ההורים שלי למסור אותי, זו הייתה החלטה מאוד נבונה, מאוד שכלית. אז לפחות אחד שישאר מכל המשפחה להמשיך הלאה את המסורת ואת החיים.
Hidden children in different countries had different experiences. Many of them were hidden in Roman Catholic institutions. And consequently, the Roman Catholic convent and the Roman Catholic monastery became a place in which they were saved.
Children were hidden at all ages. People preferred babies, and girls were easier to place. than boys were because Jewish boys were circumcised.
There were many female convents that took in Jewish children and helped them survive. But in principle, the church, both in the form of parish priests that were, after all, everywhere in Poland, and around whom the Holocaust was taking place, their attitude was essentially hands-off.
בדרך כלל מנזר הוא מטבעו מיסיונרי. להינצל בחברה הנוצרית, הוא צריך להשתחרר לגמרי מהמסורת שלו.
Let's take a simple religious example. You might have grown up in a pious Jewish family, and then all of a sudden you're living as a non-Jew, and in order to survive, you're even taught how to use Christian rituals. All of a sudden, you may tend to become a believer in that other religion.
תוך כדי התהליך הזה הוא גם הופך במשך הזמן לעוין למקורות שלו.
My father was born to a well-established family of rabbis. His father was a rabbi and served as the gabbai to the Radziminer Rebbe. And my father was very ambitious. By the time he was 18, he had a job as the foreman of a garment factory and actually was able to help his family with his income. And all the while he was courting my mother, and eventually they got married. And I was born in 1940. I was actually born when Radzimin was already a ghetto. The town was totally walled in, so there was no newspapers. There was absolutely no way for people to know what was happening outside. The only reason my father knew is because he had forged papers that identified him as a Polish railroad worker and as a Gentile. So he was going in and out. And he told the townspeople what was going to happen. They just didn't believe him.
When I saw this, my child was not 2 years old. If I know I left the child on my hand, I wouldn't make it this. It was impossible with a child to run away. We decided what can we do with the baby. This started a tragedy.
He decided that the only way to save me was to take me out of there. And so he did. My father tells me that my mother became quite hysterical. And my father had to keep telling her, our death is 100%, but she has a chance to live. We need to do this for her life and the life of Judaism. And he tells me my mother cried and begged him not to, and cuddled me and held on to me. And he at one point just almost tore her out of her arms. And the two of them went into Warsaw and just dropped me at a doorstep. They dressed me, put a sign on me that said, "This is my daughter, Natasha Chernevska, in the name of Christ, save her." And of course, my mother objected strenuously and cried. And my father said, "Look, she doesn't look Jewish. If we leave her, she has maybe a 20% chance of somebody picking her up and saving her. If we take her back to Radzimin, she has a 100% chance of dying with the rest of us."
I took a chance. It was the only way out to save this child. Our heart was bleeding. When I remind myself today, I'm crying.
From across the street, they stood there and watched. They saw the man in the building come down, because I was crying, and picked me up and walked down the street where there was a police station. And about 20 minutes later, he came back without me, and they didn't know what happened to me. What actually happened to me is that the chief of police thought, "Wow, this is a cute baby," and he took me home. Until a few months later, when there was an edict that if any Polish couple was found harboring a Jewish child, the whole family would be shot. So they took me to a convent and left me there. And this was quite common, because I found out later that many of the children who were there had been left by people to be saved. The convent is in the southern part of Warsaw, and it was a big brick house, and we were in a room on the second floor. It was very bleak. Of course, I had nothing to compare it with, but I slept in a room with very thin straw mattresses wall to wall and raggedy old clothes, and they paraded us to church. One of the things that they embedded in us was that Jews were bad people because they killed Christ. So I had a notion about Jews being bad people. I had no idea why, and I didn't quite understand what killing Christ meant. But I had this very negative feeling. After the whole town was destroyed, everybody in Radzymin was taken to Treblinka and killed the same day. And after he had already left me to save me, my father had only one thing to do, and that's to re-enter the ghetto.
I went in to join the Warsaw Underground, what we was preparing the uprising in the 19th of April in 43.
He was part of that resistance fight, and at one point, he and a man were on top of a burnt-out building after the battle had actually been lost, until one day they hoisted themselves down and entered through a manhole and spent 3 days into the sewers, and they came out on the Polish side. After that, Dad joined the Polish resistance and fought with them.
I got a double mission. If I will not survive, who will take care of the child? I got a double mission, and this was always with me, every move I used to make. I said, let me leave the moment will over and I will find it. And I got a good feeling, she is alive, she's in good hands.
Eventually, when the war was over, the first thing he did is steal a bicycle and started pedaling around to where he left me, at the station.
I was praying to God at the building, what the police station was there should be still there, because Warsaw was devastated. And the police station was saved. I said, can you remember 43, they brought here in the police station a child? Can you remember?
And they're the ones who told him that I had been taken to a convent. That convent miraculously was entirely saved.
I knocked on the door, she asked me, what can I do for you, mister? I said, sister, did you got by any chance here a child with Jarzynska, with this name Natalie? Oh, so you're a lucky father. I said, well, I'm so lucky. We got a child like this here. But, you know, it was a uprising. We evacuated all the children to Zakopane.
He pedaled for several days until he went to this other convent. And yeah, we had her, but most of the children got very sick, but she was well, so we moved her so she wouldn't get infected. Well, he pedaled around for 6 months because I had been moved so many times. And by the time he came to the last convent, they told him, yeah, but you know, everything was well, so we took her back to Warsaw because we figured that's where she started, and they may look for her there. It was kind of a desperation because he had lost his wife, he had lost his entire family, he had lost his entire town, he had lost everything. So he knew he had to find me. In a way, I am the last thing from the world I was. So he went back to the first convent, and they asked him to identify me, and he says that they really played a trick on him. They took me to the Mother Superior's office, and they let him just look among all the girls.
And she brought me in a big church, maybe 1,000 children. I can swear you, between 1,000 children was there 99% Yiddish kinder. You look in the Eigerlechers, hearts still cried at me till today. But Leiditz and Badon, parents didn't survive to take him out. I look, I cry like a child. I'm so excited. It's not my nature to get as excited. I look, the skin jumped out from me. I cannot find it.
They said, well, if you're the father and you know her, is there any way you can identify her? And then he thought and he said, yes, my child has a birthmark. One of the nuns comes for me and she says, I think your father may be here. And she took me. I had no idea what a father was. And that's when he turned around and he says, that's her. And then he found me. He was pedaling me on his bicycle to Radzamin, and he was very smart. He didn't tell me about being Jewish. But the first thing I asked when I got to the apartment, there's no crosses, why? And my father says, oh, well, we just didn't get it yet. And he didn't tell me anything.
She didn't know she's Jewish. She was running to church twice a day. She was brought up very religious.
And one day I'm playing with the girls around the yard, and they start calling me a dirty Jew. And I had no idea what they were talking about. So I came to my father.
She said, how the hell can I be Jewish? I hate the Jews. How can I be Jewish?
And my father was very smart. He said, well, what would you like to be? And I said, I want to be whatever Daddy is. And so he says, what would you say if I told you I was Jewish? And apparently I never gave it a thought, and I said, then I'm Jewish too. And it was obvious to me that he loved me because he was the first person who actually looked at me, and every time he looked at me, there was such love. He was the first person who really saw me. He saw me, the person. My father had a little storefront, and he used to provide temporary lodging, food, and clothing to Holocaust survivors going home from different camps. And one of the people that came through was a woman who had been liberated from Auschwitz, and she started taking care of me. And after a while, he married her. My father really wanted to come to the United States because he had an aunt here who had migrated in the 30s, and she was willing to sponsor us. And I remember the day we were supposed to land in New York. I woke up before dawn, so I would be the first on the ship to see the Statue of Liberty. When we came to Los Angeles, my aunt was waiting for us, and my parents were able to buy their first home here. Life was good. And I got married very young and had 2 children, and so my father now had grandchildren and could see a future for us. And I was very close with my father. We either had Shabbat at his house or had Shabbat here, and my father and I spoke every day. And he would tell me stories about Radzamin. And what a wonderful woman I was. You know, my father in France went to synagogue for the high holidays, and I remember going with him, but there was no regular shul attendance. And then one day in America, he passed like a storefront, and he heard people praying in the same manner that he remembered from home. And it was a small shtibel. And something lit up in him, and he started going every single day. And he just became so attached to that synagogue, and he was there till the very end.
I'm an observant Jew. Hitler didn't win the war with me, and I'm going every day to services in about of my children this way. I helped so many people in my life, thousands of people. God paid me this back.
I look at my life, and there are many mornings I wake up and I look and I see beautiful greenery on one side and flowers. I look on the other side, there's more flowers and more greenery. And I say, my God, how did I deserve to be in such a heaven? And thank you, God. Thank you, God.
think the question of identity to hidden children is an enormous one. The struggle to piece together who they are, for many, has been a lifelong one.
הוא היה צריך להסתגל במהירות לחברה הנוצרית, לקבל זהות חדשה.
Educating the child became problematic in a very deep way because ordinarily parents don't educate their child to lie. And here you had to teach your child to lie and to carry a double identity, the hidden identity of the Jew and the external identity of the non-Jew.
וזה מסובך מאוד לגבי ילד. לטשטש כל שריד מהזהות הקודמת שלו. זה מסוכן לאדם מבוגר, על אחת כמה וכמה לילד שיש לו, שהוא מודע לזהותו.
Many were given to a family in infancy and then only to discover that they really weren't part of that family nor part of that religion. So they really were asking questions for many years, who am I?
I was born to a young Jewish couple in Radziwiłł, Ukraine, which was part of Poland. You know, the Nazis, whenever they came to a city or a shtetl, they would round up the Jews and put them in a ghetto. And so that's what happened to my family. And I was a baby at that time. And my parents, the Kagans, were with me in the ghetto. And they found out there's going to be a raid. And so they made arrangement to escape the ghetto and go into hiding with a Polish family. There, they were hiding for a short time, but it became very dangerous for the family that was hiding them, and they were asked to leave. So they pleaded with them to take care of me, and they went to hide in another farmer's stable, where there were other Jews hiding, and all the Jews in that hiding place died. And I stayed with that Polish family by the name of Miszczak, and they were not too happy about having me, even though they had a transaction with my parents where they were supposed to take care of me for money and for valuables. She had already 2 grown-up daughters, and she wasn't too happy to have a baby. So they wanted to get rid of me, and they didn't know really how to get rid of me. Eventually, they came with a plan. They built a custom crib, which they put on hay, and they laid me on that crib in the cellar. There were big holes so that my waist would go down. They stopped feeding me, and they were hoping that I will eventually die. Lucky for me, there was a young girl, 16 years old, by the name of Zosia Stramska, who happened to share the kitchen with the Miszczak family. And she was having breakfast one morning, and she noticed a little door, which she never saw before. And she opened the door, and she came into the cellar where I was hiding. I was a skeleton, my hair was stood up, my nails were grown. It was very bad. She discovered something she's not supposed to know. But since she didn't have a mother and she was just a young girl, she didn't know what to do with me. And so she confided in her friend, Stanka Rostropovich, or Stanislava Rostropovich.
Zosia przyleciała któregoś dnia do mamy i powiedziała, że w ich domu jest przechowywane dziecko, które jest schowane w ciemnym pomieszczeniu i w strasznych warunkach.
Natalia Rostropovich, the mother of Stanka, came to the cellar, and when they saw my condition, she said to herself, what if that little girl looks Jewish? And she can put in danger my whole family. But then she felt my breath on her, and she decided to take me. She put me under her coat, took me home, and washed me, cleaned me, and they were looking for some clothes for, there were no stores, it was war. So eventually they found a dress of a doll, and they put the dress of a doll on me. I was so skinny.
To było szkielecik obciągnięty w skórę, bo ona już była dosłownie na granicy śmierci.
When they washed me and cleaned me, I was blonde with blue eyes, and I didn't look Jewish, and so they felt a relief. They came up with a story saying that I'm the daughter of a cousin. So it was a believable story. And they took care of me. I didn't feel any different than anybody else. The family that took me in, they were good people. Not every child had such luck, They truly loved me. And the reason that I came out pretty normal is definitely thanks to them. I remember going to church with them. I was there for 5 years, and obviously I did whatever they did. And I was baptized. How could I not be Christian? I was baptized, and I have the certificate to prove it. There is a story that when the Nazis invaded the place, they would take over homes. So they only left them 2 rooms. The rest of the house was German headquarters. And there was an officer by the name of Otto. He used to come and give me candies. So the Rostropovich family, they were laughing and saying, look at this officer giving candy to a Jewish girl. Had he known that? So the war ended, and an agency in Palestine at that time sent people to Europe to look for hidden children. And Natalia, she didn't keep it a secret that after the war that they have a Jewish girl.
Wyszukiwali żydowskie dzieci w rodzinach polskich. Zaczął przyjeżdżać do nas Braunstein, on się nazywał, Żyd. Z tym, że wie, że ona jest Żydówką, żeby ją oddać. Rodzice najpierw byli bardzo skonsternowani.
But they were really, really poor with 4 kids, to feed. And so the agency promised them some money. And also told them that probably that's what my parents would have wanted me, in a Jewish environment. And the Rostropovich eventually had to admit that already when I was going to school, they used to call me a dirty Jewish. They realized that probably because they loved me, that probably wouldn't be in my best interest to stay there.
Doszli do wniosku, że jednak trzeba ją zwrócić narodowi żydowskiemu.
And so she was asked, Natalia, to bring me to Lodz, where there was a Jewish orphanage, and drop me there without saying anything and just disappear. And that was it. And all of a sudden, I am here in an orphanage with other kids, and they told me I'm Jewish. Just like that. I thought that it's like a summer camp, that I'm just staying here temporarily and that eventually I'll go back home. I was pretty happy there. And there was a doctor there, a woman doctor that volunteered there. And she took a liking to me. Eventually, she came one day and she said that, I'm your mother, and we left you with the family during the war to save your life. And now we came to pick you up, and you're gonna go home now with us. My adoptive parents were Zygmunt and Sofia Goszczewski. In 1950, we made Aliyah to Israel. We moved to the house of Nehemiah Rabin, the father of Yitzhak Rabin. His wife was a cousin of my mom. My mother was not an easy person. You know, they both were survivors. So I heard a lot of stories about the Holocaust, but I definitely detached myself. I actually didn't want to hear it. You know, now I'm so sorry that I didn't listen carefully. I just wanted to feel like I'm the new generation of Jews, a proud Israeli. So I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I felt like I'm not part of that. I am something else. I'm better. I got married in 1970. My husband was also a Holocaust survivor from Germany. And we got married, and then I came to America. We lived in an apartment, and then we bought a home, this home, and we had 2 boys. And, you know, life was going in kind of a normal way. My dad passed away in 1986, and then I brought my mother here after he died. Then when she died, she wanted to be buried next to my dad, and Rachel Rabin made all the arrangements for me for the funeral. She was taking me to the hotel, and I said to her, you know, I don't know anything about my past. I mean, nothing, absolutely nothing. It's not normal. When you are 4, 5, you already remember things. She didn't say anything. And 3 weeks later, my husband passed away. So I was going through hell and hell. I get a phone call from Rachel Rabin. She says to me, remember our conversation at your mother's funeral? When you said that you want to know about your past, I have some news for you. So she told me that this Muna Gafni that went to Poland to do a research for her PhD, while she was in the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, a Polish woman came in with a folder full of personal stuff and documents. And she said, you know, we rescued a Jewish girl during the war. She was with us for 5 years, and we were looking for her for 50 years. We feel that all this stuff that we have, that we kept for all these years, should be with you. Rachel said to me, listen, there are things in that folder that you don't know. So I just want you to think about it. It's something that may upset you. Immediately I said, there's no question, I want to know. I talked to the director from that institute. And he said, you know, I really feel terrible that I have to tell you this over the phone. But the information that I have and that you don't know is that you were adopted. I was 56 years old then. So it hit me like a thunder, like a lightning. I didn't know I was adopted. My parents kept it from me. Everybody in Israel knew I'm adopted except me. I had anger that my parents never told me. I was furious at them that they didn't tell me. And this is how I had to find out. The package came and my hands were shaking when I opened it. The first time that I saw a photo of myself when I was little. I didn't have any photos whatsoever. And I read the story about myself, which I was not familiar with. It was like I'm reading a novel. I had no idea. I didn't remember anything, and I still don't remember anything. This is how deep I buried it. So I'm going on the plane, I'm nervous as hell. I arrive at the airport and there is 3 people there standing, Stanka and her sister and the husband of the sister. They're standing with flowers right in front. I couldn't miss them. And they took me to the apartment, and I'll never forget that moment. It was just the most amazing thing that even though I didn't remember them, I just felt right at home. They were so warm, and they accepted me so nicely and so with the whole heart. They were telling me all the little details they remembered from the time that I was with them. And they told me that they had my photo on the desk through all these years. And just wonderful people. I was very, very lucky.
Ciągle się spotykamy co kilka lat, co 2 lata, co 3 lata, ale tak jakby najbliższa rodzina.
When I came through the door, I was so amazed that she's doing so well at the age of 90. And I'm happy to meet her and hug her and spend time with her, because every meeting like that is something very, very special, and you never know if it's not the last one. I just want to say that I am very lucky that I spent 5 years with you. When I talk to other girls that survived, I am the luckiest one of all, and it's all thanks to you. So I'm very, very, very happy. It's very important to know who you are so that you can rebuild your life, and your revenge is that you do survive and you marry and have children and bring up the next generation. I don't want the past to rule my life now. There are people who are continuously Holocaust survivors. That's what they are. Yes, I have that past, but I'm a different person now. I'm a Jew.
My parents were married and lived in Warsaw. My father, who came from Baranovich, was a journalist. He was an editor of a Yiddish newspaper. He did it for fun, not for making a living, because he came from a relatively well-off family in Baranovich. When the war broke out, some of the Jews who understood what was happening and were able to be mobile started moving east. So my parents moved to Baranovich, which then was still Poland, which today is Belarus. I was born in Baranovich in May 1940. My Hebrew name was Avram Chanach, but in the Polish European world I was known as Henrik.
When I gave birth, I was still in their house, and I was raising the child, but the conditions were very tough. I had to work, but how could I raise the baby when I had to go to work? I wasn't allowed to stay with him home, so I had to get somebody should take care of him. That's when I got Bronislava Kurpi.
They decided, my mother, my father, and myself, with my nanny, that they would travel east. They traveled and they got as far as Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. Vilna had a vibrant Jewish community. Out of 100,000 Jews in Vilna, 3,000 survived. The community was wiped out, totally wiped out. And when the order came for Jews to report to the ghetto, I was 1 year and 3 months old.
At this moment, we're packing our belongings, as little as we had. And she turned around and she said, "What are you going to do with the child? What's going to happen to him?" So I answered, "Whatever will happen with us will happen with him." We didn't know what's waiting for us.
It was at that moment in time where my nanny said to them, "You go, I'll take care of him." This was the most unnatural decision for parents to make. It turned out to be a wise decision because the chances of a family unit of 3 with an infant surviving were -0. But I'm not sure they even knew it at that time. Nobody figured it was going to be 4 years.
When we came to the ghetto without a baby, they were pointing to me with the fingers that this mother in Oisroof left her child behind and came in to save her life in the ghetto. Because people were sure that we're coming into the ghetto to save our lives.
My nanny's name was Branislava Korpi. She took care of me from the day of my birth. So there was this personal mother type of relationship. I don't know at what point in time religion came in. She gave me a patron named Stanislav. That was my patron saint. So was Henry Stanislav Korpi. That was my new identity. She had me baptized in the church. I don't think it was a motivation in the beginning. My parents also financially took care of her. So I think it was a series of things that played into it. She wanted me to be a priest. I could have been the Cardinal of Warsaw, so who knows? And, I would go to church on Sunday. I knew the Jews were bad. I would see Jews marching to and from the ghetto and work units. I would stop and spit because that was the right thing to do. My mother escaped the ghetto on false papers as a Christian, and she would provide for us. And she would come from time to time, but I knew her as my aunt. And so again, the relationship became complicated. 2 mothers for me. One was a mother and one was an aunt, but both vying for my love and my care.
Sometimes she used to bathe him, and I was there. He would say, "Mama, let Hella bathe me." She smacked him. But she blew up like a balloon, saying in Polish, "Psiakrew." He feels something that Jewish blood is boiling in him.
The Soviets liberated Lithuania and Vilna.
They were liberating the city by each house until we got free.
When my father was liberated, he came back to Vilna to look for me, found my mother. They were reunited, and we all then lived in one place. And so the 4 of us lived together. My father had gone to check what happened in Baranovich, if anybody survived. And then basically made a decision they're going to go to Palestine. And said to my nanny that we're now a family of 4. There's nobody else that survived, and you'll be part of our family. And she said no. And in beginning in a nice way, I saved him. He belongs to me.
And that's when it started. She refused to give him back.
And then what happened was she went to the Soviets and said that my father collaborated with the Germans, which is why he survived. Okay? Interrogated him. How come you survived? 100,000 Jews perished. And we know because you collaborated. After a couple of days of interrogation, they released him. A couple of weeks later, she went again. My father became a manager of a factory. She went to the Soviets and said, my father steals. They arrested him again. They said, look, we don't have time to play these games. You have to resolve this issue in court. And so we had a custody battle.
And when the case started, she said, no, she's not going to give him up. He belongs to her. He's her child. So it was 3 trials over him. It took a year.
My nanny first argued that my parents were imposters. They had a child. They lost the child. They found this child, and now they're saying that it's theirs. The court rejected her argument. On appeal, she said that she lied, that it's not her child, but she's saving a soul for the Catholic Church. That fell on deaf ears to the Soviets. And then eventually, at a certain time, the Soviets permitted refugees to go back to their place of origin. We went to Lodz. She followed. And one night I was kidnapped by her. My parents organized a group of survivors. They kidnapped me back. And my parents then decided that there's no place for us to stay in Poland, and they smuggled the borders until we got to Bratislava. From Bratislava to Austria, we were in DP camps. And that's when being Jewish became something normal. So I used to wear a crucifix. One day, he took off the crucifix and gave me a talis katan. I used to say my prayers in Latin. He taught me the Shema. And it was more or less natural for me. He took me to shul the first time on Simchas Torah. The shul was the great synagogue of Vilna that survived. The scene was a joy and a tragedy. Here were the Jews that survived. And it was Simchas Torah. It was a time to dance. And a Soviet-Russian officer approached my father and said to him, "On Ivrei, is he Jewish?" My father said, "Yes." And he said, "I traveled thousands of kilometers and did not see a Jewish child." He says, "Can I take him?" And he took me on his shoulders and we danced. Just to fast forward 50, 60 years. Somebody told me that there was a song written about a little boy from Vilna and Simchas Torah.
We danced round and round in circles as if the world had done no wrong.
It turns out that this gentleman who survived the war, survived the Soviet Union, wound up as a rabbi in Detroit. And we had a reunion. His children were so happy to meet me because they said they didn't know whether their father was making the story up. There really existed this child, etc., etc. My father smuggled out pictures of my nanny. And I said, "My father, why'd you do that?" And he said to me, "Because I worried I wasn't sure whether you would remember her. And I wanted to make sure for the rest of your life you had an image of your nanny." I think one of the greatest lessons of faith is the survivor's rebirth. And when you look at the Roman, the Greek, the Incas, whatever, and then you look at Jewish civilization. When the Romans were defeated, when the Greeks were defeated, when the Incas were, whatever, they got up in the morning and they said, "Feh, I don't want to be a Roman. I don't want to be a Greek." Jews, after every tragedy, dusted themselves off and said, "I want to continue being a Jew." The greatest miracle, if you will, after the Shoah. 1/3 of the Jewish people destroyed in a horrendous way. And the survivors got up, brushed themselves up and said, "I want to be Jewish. And I want my children to be Jewish." Some of them lost everything. Mother, father, families, everything. What was their nakama? What was there is to not to give Hitler his posthumous victory. To raise a family, raise children, teach Yiddishkeit, build yeshivas, etc. That's a very important lesson. It's a very important lesson.
$1.5 million children under the age of 16 were killed. They were killed because they were the Jewish future.
As soon as the Second World War ended, there was a great effort to try and trace those children and to bring them back to the hands of the Jewish families.
In certain cases, the families became emotionally attached to the children, didn't want to release them. And the children, when they were turned over to non-Jewish and they were very small, and they became emotionally attached to these people, and they didn't recognize, in some cases, their own mother and their own father. And so the big struggle.
Children often say, particularly hidden children, my war began after the war.
One child said that he was 14 years old, he had a fight with his mother, and he walked out of the house storming mad, as a 14-year-old kid can. That was the last time I saw my mother, he said. If I had known it was the last time I saw my mother, if I could wake my mother up from the dead, I'd want to say one thing: I love you, Mother. And he said, I never leave home in the morning without saying to my children, I love you.
I think for the children that survived, they understand that their parents were the real heroes.
We experience the story of children survivors in two dimensions. We experience it as the children we were, and if we see it as adults, as the parents we are. And many of us come away from this feeling how incredibly blessed we are to have a normal life, not to have suffered this trauma. And we come away with enormous respect for the people who have overcome this trauma, who have become parents and grandparents, who have been able to rebuild their identity and shape their lives. They deserve tremendous credit.